I think they never been to a Diddy party. If you not dancing,
I just got hard.
Then you got to go. So security, if you see somebody and they not dancing, they got to go.
Yep.
Period, point blank.
You got more to dye in that beard than Diddy wears.
All right, that's enough.
And I know.
That's enough.
I seen him. He shows me behind the curtain.
That's enough. All right, I'm gonna edit. I'm gonna edit this out.
But still,
put a
note on there. You can edit that one.
I should.
Fresh off the garden stage. That's my brother right here from day one. We used to wake up and, pause, but like that's how. Back in the days when he was like 10 and I was a little bit older, his older brother, we used to fight over the Frosted Flakes. You know what I'm saying? Before pause was invented. You know what I'm saying? But it's my brother for real. We used to actually wrestle off of the Frosted Flakes because he used to always get up early with me. Now he's one of the richest stars in the world. And
what did Puff just say? Nobody's going to acknowledge this for me. Puff just said we used to wrestle over the Frosted Flakes, and we're streaming live. That was stupid. Listen, that was stupid. Listen.
We're having a good time. Your usher made it in the... Hey, yo.
She did, and when the judge did, Diddy, who was sitting at the defense table with his attorneys, did not show any signs of emotion. He took a sip of water before he was led out of the courtroom by the U.S. Marshals. Now, his lawyers have vowed to fight this. They are going to be back in court on Wednesday before the judge who will oversee this trial and try to get Diddy to be released.
Isn't that, to my mind, that's one of the bigger hurdles in selecting a jury this coming week, is that there is, at least anecdotally, when I talk to people, they have that opinion, strongly held opinion, that there's celebrity tapes, that they've kind of conflated Epstein, and you mentioned Ghislaine Maxwell and all of these things into Diddy. There's this idea that somehow this is Epstein redux or something.
The decision guarantees Combs will face trial beginning just 4 days from now that will test whether one of music's most prolific figures used his power, wealth, and fame to exploit both women and men for decades.
Back up a little bit, please. How can you support your father? How do you support him moving forward?
At trial, Combs will ditch the jail garb and wear ordinary clothes, as his lawyers argue the evidence shows consenting adults being intimate in their own way.
Diddy's lawyers had argued that he had made good faith efforts by showing up in New York, ready to surrender to face these charges. But prosecutors said that he could not be trusted, that he has a history of trying to intimidate witnesses, including some who are going to be witnesses in this case. They urge the judge to remand him.
Mr. Combs feels A, he's innocent, which is why he's not going to plead guilty. B, he's going to be truthful about this case because he wants to portray that to the people who have loved him his whole life. And I think he also feels an obligation to people in general. Maybe it's black people, maybe it's white people, maybe it's anybody who's ever felt aggrieved and targeted by the government. He feels an obligation to those people to say, you know what, maybe I can break the model. Maybe I can show the world that a black man can win, in federal court. And I think he probably is the only person I know of who might be able to actually accomplish that.
Well, Bill and Sade, accepting a plea agreement would mean that Sean Combs would have to admit to trafficking and force. And today he made it very clear that was not going to happen. Diddy maintained all along these encounters involved consenting adults and plans to take his chances that a jury agrees.
We have the latest from federal court in the Sean Combs criminal case. Status of jury selection, what Diddy's going to be wearing, violation of a gag order, rejecting a plea offer.
Elaborate, sometimes days-long parties by coercing victims through drugs, threats, and manipulation. They claim to have video evidence, and some of the accusations echo details from over 70 civil lawsuits filed against Combs over the last 30 years.
What happens is if people go into a trial believing the firepower on the prosecution is so strong, let's say on a scale of 1 to 100, it's a 95 that it's so strong, but it goes down to an 88. That helps the defense because everybody goes in thinking, wow, they're going to prove this, and they're going to prove this, and they're going to prove this, and all of a sudden, none of it's there. I think that actually helps the defense.
The last hearing before Sean Combs' trial starts, when he walked into federal court today, he appeared to be looking for his family. They've pretty much been at all of the hearings that I've been to, but there was no presence of his sons or his mother or his sister who had previously been at those hearings.
He knows the deck is stacked against him. They've got a ton of evidence. Take the plea deal, dude. Just take it.
Well, my guess is that, because we don't know the deal of the plea deal. At least I don't think we do.
True.
Okay.
Major developments tonight involving the case against Sean Diddy Combs, what he decided in court today, and what this now means, the move coming just 4 days before his trial is set to begin. Here's Aaron Katursky.
Tonight, Sean Combs makes it official. He's rejecting the government's offer to plead guilty and spare himself the possibility of a prolonged term in prison. When asked if he turned down the offer, Combs answered, "Yes, I do, Your Honor," as he stood in a baggy beige jail uniform. Terms were not disclosed, but prosecutors did say a plea could result in a shorter sentence for Combs than if he's convicted.
Music mogul Sean Diddy Combs back behind bars, a magistrate judge denying him bail, saying that there were no conditions that she could conceive of that would make her confident that he would appear again for other court appearances. The judge saying, "My concern is this is a crime that happens behind closed doors."
Would you be open to a plea bargain?
Well, it's not up to me. It's up to Mr. Combs, and I don't see it happening.
Why?
Because he believes he's innocent. He believes he's innocent, and what's more, he believes that he needs to stand up, not just for himself, for his family, and for everybody who's been targeted by the federal government.
Do you still think that, because there is this public perception, that there are celebrity tapes involved in this case?
No.
Do you still think that there are minors involved in this case?
I'm certain no.
Okay.
And again, when you say this case, we're talking the criminal case.
The criminal case.
In the
correct.
criminal,
I know that.
In the criminal case,
the,
in the criminal case,
right.
No.
Now, as far as jury selection goes, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that both sides expect to have all of this done in the matter of 3 days. Now, given just how high profile this trial is, I was kind of stunned that they seem very confident that they will be able to seat a jury in that amount of time.
Federal trafficking, racketeering, and charges beginning Monday morning.
What made you come here to support Puff?
I'm supporting Puff because he's innocent, and I'm wholeheartedly believing his innocence, and I knew he's innocent. So
you say you know he's innocent?
1,000%.
This is going to be such a massive trial, like maybe the biggest Hollywood trial. God knows which way it's going to go. Is it going to go on for weeks?
For sure, weeks.
Rumors are circulating. A federal judge in New York has ordered comedian Kevin Hart to appear in court as a witness in the expanding criminal case against music mogul Sean Diddy Combs, according to newly filed documents. The directive, disclosed during a closed-door hearing and later reflected in the public docket, underscores how prosecutors are widening their search for corroboration as they pursue allegations that Combs orchestrated a long-running scheme involving R, S, T, and AB. Hart, a longtime fixture in the entertainment circuit, hosted multiple high-profile parties sponsored by Combs at private estates and hotel penthouses during the period now under scrutiny, lawyers said in chambers. Prosecutors contend the gatherings may hold critical context for a pattern of behavior they claim stretched far beyond the music industry and into lavish social events where, investigators allege, illicit activity was normalized behind closed doors. Court officials said the order was delivered to Hart's representatives by hand after earlier attempts to secure a voluntary interview stalled. The court wants to hear from any high-profile witness who may have direct knowledge of the allegations. Civil rights attorney Lisa Bloom told reporters outside the federal courthouse. Mr. Hart's testimony could help jurors understand the culture that surrounded Combs at the relevant time, Bloom added. A spokesperson for Hart declined immediate comment, citing instructions from counsel. Combs' lawyer, Mark Agnafilo, dismissed the development as a publicity maneuver and said his client looks forward to clearing his name in court. Inside the courtroom, Assistant United States Attorney Dana Palmer told the judge the government intends to ask Hart about private jet itineraries and after-party rosters pieced together from flight logs, security footage, and encrypted text messages. Defense counsel objected, arguing the material falls outside the scope of the indictment and risks turning the proceeding into a celebrity circus. The judge overruled, noting that the government had laid out a good faith basis to believe Hart could shed light on Combs' intent and state of mind. Legal observers say Hart's brand management team has been assessing potential reputational fallout as archived footage showing Hart alongside Combs at poolside gatherings resurfaces online. Sources close to the comedian described him as deeply frustrated that his name is now tied to a federal probe in which, they insist, he played no role beyond attending industry mixers. Combs faces charges that include and financial misconduct tied to an alleged network of shell companies that prosecutors say funneled proceeds from concert tours and licensing deals into discretionary accounts used to bankroll private events. Investigators have focused on those events to illustrate what they describe as a deliberate strategy to cultivate loyalty among collaborators while silencing critics. By portraying the parties as mere perks of networking, prosecutors argue Combs sought to blur ethical boundaries and normalize conduct that crossed into criminal territory. Hart's invitation to testify comes as prosecutors refine a witness list that already features former security contractors, event planners, and record executives. Several have entered cooperation agreements in exchange for leniency on unrelated matters. Trial preparation accelerated after federal agents executed search warrants at Combs' own properties in Los Angeles and Miami, seizing electronic devices, guest lists, and internal emails. Some of the seized material allegedly references Hart in scheduling notes, prompting questions about whether the comedian was privy to behind-the-scenes planning. Combs' defense insists the prosecution is overreaching by pulling in entertainers who happen to share the same event space. Being photographed at a party is not evidence of wrongdoing, Agnifilo told the court in a recent filing. In a memo submitted under seal, prosecutors outlined their rationale for compelling Hart's appearance, citing encrypted group chats that document strategy calls about private gatherings where, investigators believe, phones and outside press were barred. Palmer said the government plans to ask Hart about a gathering in a Las Vegas suite, where, according to witness statements, Combs allegedly discussed contingency plans should law enforcement inquiries surface. The judge stated that compelling testimony from public figures is unusual yet permissible when visibility could lend weight to disputed facts, and warned both parties against leaking confidential witness lists. Media relations experts note that Hart has built a brand on family-friendly humor and lucrative endorsements, making any association with allegations of R or ST especially delicate. As word of the subpoena spread, major sponsors quietly began monitoring online sentiment but have not pulled advertisements featuring Hart. Bloom predicted that Hart will comply, citing the legal consequences of ignoring a court order. Hart's anticipated appearance is expected to follow testimony from Cassie Ventura, a former partner of Combs who has filed a separate civil complaint alleging SA and retaliation. The order compelling Hart arrives during jury selection, a phase already challenged by extensive media coverage and social media commentary that trends under hashtags referencing the case. Potential jurors have been asked whether they follow accounts focused on celebrity misconduct. To mitigate the spotlight, the judge has scheduled a closed pre-testimony session to address privilege concerns raised by Hart's lawyers, who argue certain exchanges with Combs may fall under verbal non-disclosure arrangements common among entertainers. If the judge rejects those claims, prosecutors could obtain a more unfiltered narrative of how Combs' social circle functioned, a dynamic analysts say could bolster the government's portrayal of a tightly controlled environment. Hart's camp has not indicated whether the comedian will invoke the Fifth Amendment. Legal specialists note that witnesses who face negligible exposure typically testify after securing assurances they will not be charged based on their statements. While the subpoena names Hart, entertainment insiders expect the move to pressure other performers who frequented Combs' gatherings. Several have already retained counsel and are reviewing old non-disclosure agreements for potential conflicts with grand jury requirements. The judge emphasized that public interest in the case is significant and legitimate, stressing that transparency outweighs concerns about celebrity discomfort. The court promised to rule swiftly on motions aimed at limiting the scope of Hart's testimony. Social media reaction was immediate, with fans expressing surprise at the comedian's connection to allegations of AB and financial manipulation. Marketing analysts predict that the publicity could influence box office performance for Hart's upcoming projects, though though previous controversies have not materially dented his stand-up ticket sales. Combs released a statement through his publicist denying wrongdoing and accusing prosecutors of weaponizing celebrity friendships to distract from what he termed a baseless indictment. The statement suggested the judge's order was timed to coincide with Hart's film promotion cycle, calling the decision calculated. Court watchers counter that the subpoena was issued before the studio tour began, suggesting any overlap is coincidental. As the trial moves forward, attorneys expect the witness list to grow and say the spectacle could reshape how entertainers manage partnerships with executives whose dealings face enhanced scrutiny. Next on the schedule, the court will hold a hearing to finalize protective order parameters governing exhibits that may contain risque imagery from private parties. Defense lawyers argue such material would prejudice jurors, while prosecutors insist it is vital for establishing context. The judge indicated a willingness to allow blurred visuals if both sides agree on redaction protocols, balancing privacy interests with evidentiary needs. If Hart takes the stand, prosecutors could use his testimony to corroborate travel ledgers showing Combs' movements among concert stops, private islands, and overseas marketing events. The defense plans to cast Hart as a peripheral figure who attended events strictly for networking, with no awareness of illicit conduct. Both sides agree the comedian's schedule is tight, complicating logistics. The judge has authorized a narrow window for Hart's appearance and warned counsel to streamline examination to avoid delay. Behind the scenes, streaming platforms are developing docuseries, treatments chronicling the case, anticipating public demand for long-form explanations once a verdict arrives. For now, the spotlight remains on the courthouse, where barricades separate demonstrators, reporters, and onlookers awaiting high-profile arrivals. Jury selection is nearing completion, and the court is set to shift into opening statements once the panel is seated. At this stage, the directive for Hart to testify stands unchallenged, positioning the comedian as a pivotal witness in proceedings that blend celebrity intrigue with serious criminal accusations. The next pre-trial conference is expected early next week to address outstanding discovery disputes and potential scheduling conflicts linked to Hart's film commitments. Prosecutors signaled they will summon more high-profile witnesses and introduce new encrypted messages at the coming evidentiary hearing in the federal case against Sean Diddy Combs, a move defense lawyers said risks turning the trial into a rolling media spectacle. The notice filed under seal, but later summarized in open court outlines a strategy to show that what authorities describe as a culture of intimidation extended across multiple cities, linking private parties, talent contracts, and a cash pipeline masked by legitimate tour expenses. Assistant United States Attorney Dana Palmer told the judge that additional subpoenas have gone out to performers, choreographers, and personal assistants who allegedly observed Combs directing funds toward what investigators label slush accounts used to reward silence or loyalty. The filing states that unnamed entertainers were granted lavish appearance fees routed through intermediaries, underscoring what prosecutors contend was a coordinated effort to shield the real purpose of the gatherings, now central to the indictment. Defense attorney Mark Agnifilo countered that the government is fishing for headlines and warned that the list of pending subpoenas reads more like a festival lineup than a witness roster focused on relevant facts. The judge responded that the prosecution may call anyone with first-hand knowledge of events described in the charging documents, provided the testimony remains tethered to the alleged R scheme and related money laundering counts. Legal experts say the ruling gives the government latitude to explore the social dynamics that framed Combs' rise in influence, a narrative the defense insists has no bearing on whether specific transactions broke federal law. One entertainment law scholar, Loyola professor Sandra Warner, said the approach mirrors tactics used in past white-collar cases where prosecutors sought to humanize financial misconduct by tracing its impact on real participants. In court, Palmer argued that high-visibility witnesses help jurors grasp how Combs allegedly used star power to normalize questionable payouts, framing the payments as routine hospitality rather than hush money. Agnifilo said any suggestion that party invitations equated to criminal complicity is patently unfair. Meanwhile, comedian Kevin Hart has begun trial preparation sessions with his legal team, according to a spokesperson who described the process as extremely detailed and exhaustive. People close to Hart said he reviewed calendars, social media archives, and travel receipts to reconstruct timelines that prosecutors believe overlap with key dates in the indictment. A source with direct knowledge of the meetings said Hart remains concerned about inadvertently mischaracterizing names or locations, mindful of the potential for perjury allegations if recollections conflict with digital records. The judge has encouraged both sides to streamline exhibit lists before Hart's testimony to minimize delays and avoid subjecting jurors to lengthy sidebar discussions over foundation and authenticity. Court staff have reserved a secure waiting area for Hart and other public figures expected to appear, a precaution meant to limit encounters with reporters or demonstrators who continue to cluster outside the courthouse. Authorities have maintained a visible presence after social media calls for protest gained traction, though officials said no credible threats have surfaced. Inside, debates over sealed evidence grew sharper when prosecutors moved to admit a cache of direct messages recovered from a discarded smartphone found at a rental property once leased by Combs's holding company. Forensic technicians said the device contained group chat exchanges in which participants discussed staging last-minute destination parties, referencing private aircraft manifests and foreign bank transfers. Defense lawyers questioned the chain of custody, claiming the phone's owner remains unidentified and that data could have been altered. The judge instructed both sides to prepare digital forensic experts for a Daubert hearing, signaling that admissibility will depend on a clear demonstration of integrity and provenance. Separately, attorneys representing singer Cassie Ventura confirmed she will appear under a limited grant of immunity to describe what she characterized in a civil complaint as AB and coercion by Combs during their relationship. Ventura's account is expected to be contested vigorously, yet prosecutors believe her timeline dovetails with financial ledgers that show unexplained withdrawals coinciding with trips she alleges were orchestrated to keep her isolated from advisors. Combs has denied Ventura's claims and accused her legal team of leveraging the criminal case to bolster a private settlement demand. In a statement to reporters, Ventura's attorney Douglas Wigdor said the singer's only goal is to ensure the truth is heard. Jennifer Lopez, another prominent figure linked publicly to Combs in the late 1990s, has retained counsel after reports that prosecutors may seek her perspective on industry events. People familiar with the matter stress that Lopez is not accused of wrongdoing and could provide context on studio sessions and video shoots where Combs's business practices shaped workplace norms. Music business historian Nelson George said celebrity testimony can illustrate how influence radiates outward through every layer of production, reinforcing prosecutors' theory that the alleged R enterprise thrived on a code of silence. Within the courtroom, juror questionnaires revealed split views on whether artists should be held accountable for associations alone, raising fresh challenges for both sides as they weigh preemptive strikes during voir dire. Some potential jurors expressed admiration for Hart's philanthropy and skepticism that attendance at A-list parties conveys legal knowledge of wrongdoing. Others wrote that entertainers bear moral responsibility for the environments they help create. The judge reminded counsel that jurors may discuss fame in abstract terms, but must ultimately decide on evidence presented, not reputation. Media outlets have petitioned for real-time audio access, arguing that the public interest outweighs concerns about witness anxiety. Prosecutors and defense lawyers united in opposition, citing risks that live broadcasts could influence testimony or spark harassment. The court took the request under advisement, noting that transparency must be balanced against trial integrity. Public relations strategists said Combs's team faces a dual challenge: protecting the artist's brand while avoiding any appearance of witness intimidation. A person involved in discussions described a plan to pivot social content toward philanthropic initiatives unrelated to music, an attempt to counter negative narratives without contradicting legal filings. Analysts following brand valuations estimated that streaming numbers for Combs's back catalog dipped modestly as headlines intensified, though overall market share remained stable. Sponsorship experts observed that corporate partners often adopt a wait-and-see stance when criminal allegations surface, mindful that premature contract terminations can trigger costly litigation. Hart's production company has reportedly reviewed its insurance coverage to ensure policies address potential civil subpoenas that could follow public testimony. Insiders said contingency planning also involves scheduling flexibility, as film shoots may need to pause if the comedian is recalled for rebuttal questioning. The prosecution hinted it may reserve the right to recall Hart should inconsistencies arise between his statements and later testimony from logistics coordinators who managed event security. Defense lawyers objected, labeling the tactic oppressive, but the judge declined to limit recall authority at this stage. Another focal point emerged when prosecutors notified the court of fresh bank subpoena returns, suggesting that shell entities under Combs' umbrella received large transfers labeled consulting fees from a European promoter. Investigators say the money trail supports allegations of capital flows designed to obscure our proceeds. Agnifilo dismissed the transfers as standard international royalties, challenging the government to prove any link to criminal intent. Financial crime analyst Sheila Alvarado said cross-border payments through subsidiaries are common in the music industry, but become suspect if invoices lack detail, as prosecutors claim in this instance. The court will hear expert testimony on industry accounting norms to help jurors distinguish aggressive tax planning from fraudulent concealment. Witness lists indicate former auditors may testify about internal memos that flagged related party transactions for heightened risk years before law enforcement inquiries began. Those memos, obtained under subpoena, allegedly warned executives that overlapping ownership structures could attract regulatory scrutiny. Defense filings argue such advice reflects conservative compliance culture, not proof of misconduct. While legal wrangling continues, cultural commentators have zeroed in on the broader significance of celebrity accountability in an era where public personas intersect with private power. Writer Kierna Mayo observed that communities long attuned to systemic inequities see parallels between this case and earlier reckonings in sports and film, reinforcing calls for structural change. Social justice advocates are monitoring whether the proceedings validate concerns that wealth and fame insulate accused figures until insider narratives break through. Prosecutors have stressed that the indictment is evidence-driven, yet they acknowledge that cooperation from insiders often springs from shifting public sentiment. In that vein, investigators continue to interview dancers and assistants who previously signed non-disclosure clauses, many of which contain carve-outs if subpoenaed. Attorneys advising those potential witnesses are exploring limited immunity as a safeguard against self-incrimination, stemming from their own roles coordinating travel or expenses. The defense insists such deals incentivize embellishment, a critique Palmer rejected, noting that corroboration standards require independent documentation. Technical teams have begun sifting through cloud backups recovered with vendor assistance, a process expected to generate thousands of pages of encrypted chat logs and gigabytes of video. Discovery deadlines are tight, prompting the judge to authorize rolling disclosures once data is decrypted and relevance established. That decision drew a mild rebuke from defense counsel, who argued staggered deliveries hamper cohesive trial strategy. The court encouraged both sides to employ digital review platforms to streamline tagging and search functions, an approach common in modern complex litigation. As legal maneuvers intensify, grassroots organizers plan a town hall discussion on celebrity culture and accountability, highlighting the intersection of entertainment, economic power, and alleged abuse of influence. Event coordinators said the panel will include activists, scholars, and former music executives prepared to dissect how contractual power imbalances can silence dissent. Marketing consultants predict that renewed focus on systemic concerns could reshape how endorsements are structured, with morality clauses receiving greater weight during negotiations. Within Combs' circle, advisors are weighing whether the mogul should make a limited courtroom appearance to project confidence or maintain distance until compelled. Image managers caution that any unscripted moment could overshadow defense messaging, yet some argue that absence may be construed as evasive. Industry veterans recall past trials where defendants curtailed public engagement, only to face critique for seeming disconnected from proceedings involving their livelihoods. Observers note that jurors often subconsciously track a defendant's demeanor, interpreting composure or agitation as signals of credibility. If Combs does appear, security planning will ramp up, drawing coordination among federal marshals, local police, and private detail. For now, Combs remains at an undisclosed location under travel restrictions set by the court, participating in daily legal briefings via encrypted conference lines. His legal team continues to prepare witness outlines and mock examinations, drilling on potential cross-questions that hinge on financial jargon and entertainment industry slang. Experienced trial consultants emphasize the importance of explaining colloquial expressions that may confuse jurors unfamiliar with music world vernacular. Both sides agree the upcoming evidentiary hearing will shape the narrative jurors carry into opening statements, determining whether they view the case primarily as a financial crime prosecution prosecution, or a broader expose of celebrity excess. The court has slated that hearing for early next month, barring unforeseen delays linked to witness availability or pending motions on the admissibility of digital evidence. Until then, Combs' defense and the prosecution will continue exchanging discovery and refining arguments, with Kevin Hart's anticipated testimony looming as a pivotal